Hey, welcome to Janktown. Will here. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you had a great holiday season. 2024 is upon us, which means Ravnica Remastered is just over the horizon. I don't know how I feel about the set. I'm okay with it. You know, a lot of reprints. We do get Psych Rift, Dreadhorde General, Shocklands. However, what I'm probably most excited for is the anime art that we'll be getting. A lot of them are really good, and in particular, the one I'm most excited for is our commander, Massacre Girl. Now, Massacre Girl is a 5-mana value mono black 4/4 human assassin that reads when she enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Then, whenever a creature dies this turn, each other creature gets a -1/-1 again. But abilities aside, the best part about this card is gotta be its art. I mean, just look at that. It's so sick. I mean, it's so badass. If Magic was an anime, this is a perfect look for a character called Massacre Girl. Now we'll be going over our deck's playstyles, the deck's themes, and we'll end with a walkthrough of the specific card choices. Now if that sounds good to you, I hope you could hit the like, share, and subscribe. Really helps the channel out. And let's get into it. Now, the first thing I usually like to do when building out a deck is trying to figure out what is the role of our commander. Now, Massacre Girl kind of reads like an enabler. She's usually the 99, but as a commander, I think she's an enabler. We don't always need her to be there, but when she shows up, she'll make the deck run so much better and really try to unlock its potential. She's essentially an on-call board wipe because she's always sitting in the command zone, and the -1/-1 sounds like a little, but I mean, come mid-game, late-game, it's almost guaranteed to be a board wipe. Now this board wipe is actually really good because it gets around stuff like Indestructible, Hexproof, Shroud, a lot of the protection stuff that people usually like to play to try to protect their commanders or try to protect their board. Obviously we can't get through phasing, but I mean, what hits phasing? Now because of this, we'll probably run into opponents who have like encountered Massacre Girl before or something along those lines to play more conservatively. That means that games could go on a bit longer than we're probably used to because a lot of players are afraid to commit to the board because it'll just get wiped out. Which means we should probably use that like little slowdown in the game or a slower pace to then pressure life totals and try to get in whenever we can. Now we are going to be playing a bit of a complex deck. I mean, nothing too crazy, but we need to be able to sequence the stack strategically so that we can take advantage of the triggers. Massacre Girl's ability is a triggered one, and that when a creature dies, it then puts the -1/-1 on the stack. We probably want our other triggers going off first, maybe like +1/+1 counters and things like this, so we can then grow our creatures, prevent them from dying while still taking out all of our opponent's boards. The game plan though is a good old Timmy Beatdown, which means we want big creatures, want to be able to swing in and clear the board of blockers with Massacre Girl's ability. Now I will admit Aristocrats is probably the most efficient way to go about winning games, but I mean, this just seems so much more fun. There are better Aristocrat commanders out there anyway. Mono black is I think the top color when it comes to Aristocrats. So yeah, Timmy Beatdown, baby, let's go. We'll be covering the deck's usual themes of ramp, removal, and draw, but we'll first tackle the Deathmongers, NPCs, Plan B, and something we like to call UBP or Utilities, Bombs, and Pets. Because we have an on-call board wipe sitting in the command zone, we want to take advantage of all the death that we'll be causing. Slaughter Specialist is a 2-drop 3/3 that creates a 1/1 token for our opponents when it enters the battlefield, but when an opponent creature dies, it then grows itself. Yahenni Undying Partisan, kind of a similar clause. On top of that, it has haste, it protects itself, and it's one of my favorite creatures of all time, probably part of my signature spellbook if I had one. But these two are great to put down in the early game so they can start growing, and so we can establish a threat early. However, at the top end of our curve are Sendure the Dark Baron and Ob Nixilis. They care about when any creature dies, including our own. Sendure the Dark Baron in particular gets big really quick because we get to put 2 +1/+1 counters on him whenever a creature dies. These are our finishers. They get big really quick, they have evasion, so hopefully with these guys we can take somebody out. Outside of creatures though, we are running Blade of the Blood Chief, Tarian Soul Cleaver, and Necrosynthesis. Again, they all read similarly. Whenever a creature dies, we get to make the equipped creature or the enchanted creature bigger. It's really good, you know, just in case you don't draw Yahenni or Sendure or something like this. We can then make some random dork become the hero of our game plan. We are causing a lot of death though, and Spoils of Blood and Blood Crazed Paladin pair as spells that care about how many creatures die this turn. They could probably be played, on someone else's turn because they are instant and flash, but it's a good follow-up play after we cast Massacre Girl, and being at 1 and 2 mana value, you don't need a lot of mana to be able to cast them. Not like in any video game or movie where there are just a lot of people dying, we need our NPCs, non-player characters for those who don't know. Genesis Chamber is a 2-drop artifact that creates a 1/1 whenever somebody plays a creature. It's fine if our opponents get creatures. I mean, we want to be able to kill them eventually with Massacre Girl. A Crow and Horse, a 4-drop 0/4 defender that when it enters the battlefield, an opponent gains control of it. Then at the beginning of their upkeep, every other player creates a 1/1 soldier. So it gives us creatures, but it also gives us some creature fodder in our other opponent's boards to then be able to take out with Massacre Girl. Tribute to Heroic, it's a 2-drop saga. The first and second chapter are really why we want to play this. Each opponent gets a rat. Now the usual thing that happens is they just attack into each other and we don't really get the backside. But that's fine. I mean, it's fine. We do want creatures dying, so we'll take it any way we can. And then there's Infernal Genesis, a janky 6-drop enchantment, which reads at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they mill 1, and depending on how much that card costs in terms of its mana value, that player puts X 1/1 tokens into play. Really good way to be able to give creatures to our opponents, plus, give us a bit of a board ourselves. And again, this is all just fodder for Massacre Girl. Some other consistent ways to be able to create tokens are Bitter Blossom and Lord Skitter. Now, these guys only create tokens for us, unlike the other 4 that I mentioned before. We don't even need to amass a whole lot from these guys. I mean, just a couple of tokens do the trick of being able to get the ball rolling with Massacre Girl. And Lord Skitter, I mean, it's also just got Responsible Graveyard Hate tacked onto it. Now, speaking of Graveyard Hate, we're also running Sat's Will. I really like this second mode where we get to exile all the cards from all opponents' graveyards, and then we create a bunch of tokens for ourselves. Bow Strider comes in with a 0/1 goat, and is also a sack outlet in case we just need to get the ball rolling. However, Reassembling Skeleton and Nether Trader, just good ways to be able to manipulate the Massacre Girl triggers. I talked about sequencing the stack strategically, and what we'd want then is, for example, Reassembling Skeletons on the battlefield, Massacre Girl comes in, -1/-1 all around. Skeleton dies, another -1/-1 is now on the stack. We can then pay 2, put the skeleton back in, then the -1/-1 goes off, the skeleton dies again. By this time, everything's got -2/-2. We rinse and repeat until we cleanse the board. Last card on the NPC list is Awaken the Erstwhile, a 5 mana value sorcery that makes each player discard their hand and essentially turn them into 2/2 zombies. However, that does make us empty-handed as well, so you gotta read the room before you fire this off. Ideally, we wanna beat people down with our big creatures. However, not everything always goes according to plan. So the plan B cards are something like Revel in Riches, which if we have 10 treasures, we can just outright win the game. We create treasures whenever an opponent's creature dies. And there's also Vorpal Sword, because if we clear the board and if we have 8 mana and then we equip this onto Massacre Girl, we can just go right in there for the insta-kill. Sir Conrad the Grim, just a classic finisher in black, loves it when creatures are dying. Massacre Worm now deals 2 life loss whenever a creature an opponent controls dies. And Archfiend of the Dross could be a little scary because of that lose the game clause, but yeah, I'm not too worried about that. We have a board wipe in our command zone. We always take it out whenever we want. And the 2 life loss is a pretty good clock. We are running 1 Aristocrat piece though in Bastion of Remembrance. It's an enchantment that pretty much reads like an Aristocrat. Whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, we gain 1 life. Now, I do value this over cards like Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat, because this is an enchantment, which means when Massacre Girl enters the battlefield, she's not gonna accidentally just kill this and essentially put a stop to our plan B. Alright, ramp time. Meat and potatoes, veggies, we always need this. Soul Ring, Signet Bauble, nothing here you haven't seen before. However, I do like Soul Devi Adnate, just a sack outlet that is almost like a ritual in itself. Pawn of Ulamog, 3-drop 2/2 that creates an Eldrazi whenever it or another creature we control dies. And Pitiless Plunderer, just an insane value engine. Whenever a creature we control dies, whether it's token or non-token, creates us a treasure. This is usually a combo piece, but we're not playing it for that. This is really just for value. Good to get some treasures in and really get our game plan going. I do value Land Ramp though in Burnish Heart, Solemn Simulacrum, just great cards to be able to get actual lands into play instead of mana rocks that might get blown up. And Sword of Hearth and Home is actually a sneaky good card because we can blink Massacre Girl if we're able to connect, and that gets the whole board wipe rolling once again, but also good for lands. We are expecting a longer game though, which means Cryptghast, just a mana doubler that we can get a lot of value out of, and Black Market, which cares about creatures dying, and and I've just always seen this overperform. It sounds like a drag to cast it on turn 5 and then do nothing, but you know, it accumulates so much value over the course of a game, especially the longer ones. For removal, we're running some staples. Feed the Swarm, just good for getting rid of creatures or enchantments. Toxic Deluge, just another good wipe out there that gets around Shroud, Indestructible, Hexproof, things like this, and Oblivion Stone. It's hard to answer non-creature permanents when you're in black, so this is just a good clean sweep to just start the board over, start the game over, especially if we're getting locked out. Massacre, I mean, it's in the name. It gives creatures -2/-2, potentially play this for free. Last Laugh is actually one of the janky cards. Kind of uncontrollable, but it's really funny when it goes off. So I just really love playing this card. It's a good board wipe as well. And we can play it when we don't want to cast Massacre Girl just yet. And then there's Crypt Rats. Kind of like a Pestilence on a creature. We can pay X to be able to deal X damage to each creature and each player. How I generally play Crypt Rats is I like to activate the ability across several instances. That way we get separate instances of it on the stack. And we can then like sneak in triggers and things like this. Again, sequence your stack strategically. Last on the removal is Sheoldred. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. When enough things have died, we can then flip it and it becomes insane in the back, ending with Chapter 3 as a Rise of the Dark Realms, where we put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under our control. To smoothen out our gameplay, we do need some sources of reliable card draw, and Deadly Dispute, Read the Bones, and Siphon Mind are just good one-time sort of effects to just smoothen out our card draw. We'll call the Ring, Black Market Connections, just a consistent source of card draw, drawing us an extra card per turn. Ayara, First of Locthwain, also draws us one extra card per turn, but we have to tap her. And the extra incidental life gain is just a nice bonus, which could come in clutch, especially in these tight games. Tavish Sat, Doom of Fools allows us to draw 2, but also with the versatility of creating 2 0/1 Black Thrall tokens that we can then just use to feed into Massacre Girl's abilities. For burst card draw, we have Skull Clamp, card that's absolutely insane. Plum the Forbidden, also pretty cracked. And Dark Prophecy, whenever a creature we control dies, we draw a card, lose a life. Really great for refilling our hand, especially in times when we feel like we're running out of gas. UBP time. Now, because a lot of creatures are dying, I'm excited to run Thrilling Encore. It's a 5 mana value instant that puts onto the battlefield all creatures that are put there from the battlefield this turn. So with Massacre Girl, kind of expensive because now you've played 5 for Massacre Girl and now 5 for the Encore. But hey, when somebody else board swipe and we aren't ready, just a good way to get value off of that. Rise of the Dreadbarn, we can foretell and then later cast for 1. Just a good way to be able to flood the board immediately and really start pressuring life totals. Some blink effects though in black are Malakir Rebirth, Feign Death, and Not Dead After All. For those who play Modern, you already know this. This is probably haunting your nightmares right now. Then there's Spawning Pit, a 2-drop artifact that's a sack outlet. Nothing too flashy here. Then if we need an emergency blocker, we just need more fodder. It just does its job and it does it well. The Ozolith is a good way to be able to save the +1/+1 counters that we've put on like creatures like Slaughter Specialist, Yahenni, in case those guys die. And finally, last card of the deck is Sudden Spoiling. It's a 3 mana value instant with Split Second, meaning it can't be countered, can't be responded to, and until end of turn, creatures target player controls loses all abilities and they get base power toughness 0/2. So if someone's running, you know, giant creatures, maybe Eldrazi's they've gotten out of hand, good way to be able to save yourself, or we can make them really tiny, which then makes them susceptible to being massacred. And that's it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you found this video useful, I hope you could leave a like, share, and subscribe. That really helps the channel out. I'm excited to pick up my own copy of this anime version of Massacre Girl. If you have suggestions for future videos, do leave it in the comments. I will read them and get to them. And in the meantime, stay inspired, friends, and I'll see you soon.